Hello, I'm Madeline Smith from the Innovation School at the Glasgow School of Art in Scotland. Glasgow is a partner city in the 4H Create project, keen to be involved and help stimulate and grow the creative economy in the city and the region. Here at the Innovation School, we use design innovation approaches to address complex challenges, bringing together creative collaborations and helping organisations and individuals to innovate and unleash their creativity. As part of the 4H Create project, GSA ran a series of design innovation workshops for creative entrepreneurs in Glasgow, helping them to explore their ideas, to map their networks and opportunities, and build an action plan for growth. These workshops built from an ongoing programme of research with different partners in the UK and beyond. Today, we've invited Dr. Michael Pierre Johnson to talk a little bit more about that research and how it's helping build cooperation in the creative and cultural industries, and in particular, to explain the example of the Network for Creative Enterprise in Bristol in the southwest of the UK. Hello, Michael.
Hello, Madeline.
By way of introduction, could you say a few words about yourself and what makes this research of interest to 4H Create?
Of course. So, I'm an early career innovation leadership fellow in the creative and digital economy, funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council based in the UK, and I'm here with you at the Innovation School at the Glasgow School of Art. The basis of my research comes from my PhD, which was back in 2015, Mapping Design Things, which had developed a visual mapping methodology to capture and analyze, at that time, the role of design in complex innovation contexts. I've since built experience applying and researching design innovation across a variety of contexts. This includes supporting innovative development of medium-sized organizations, digital health technology, and craft makers in the Highlands and Islands region of Scotland, as well as researching and supporting new business development, evaluating the impact of co-design approaches to public sector engagement, and even delivering creative engagement activities to support collaboration across an emerging wine cluster in Canada. So my fellowship, which is titled The Value of Creative Growth, builds on that trajectory of work and experience to address challenges in understanding, capturing, and developing upon value creation in the creative and digital industries. In particular, my focus is on creative enterprises at the sole trader and micro enterprise level, that's 1 to 5 people, as they represent a significant proportion of the creative sector and yet are often underrepresented in economic statistics and therefore policy making. The way I'm doing this is to use visual mapping and design innovation methods to support and gather data on individual enterprises based on their networks of people, organizations, resources, and assets that their creative work engages with, and ask what progress or value means in relation to those networks and those relationships. So my fellowship has partnered with network-based organizations such as the Network for Creative Enterprise down in southwest England and Bristol to explore how such data can be made useful to them and support strategic aims of developing creative and cultural enterprises within their regional context. It has been this process of making mapping and design innovation approaches useful to creative enterprise and relevant support organizations that actually led to Glasgow Caledonian University approaching us to deliver workshops as part of their program of support and research within the 4H Create project. It was felt that some of the wider projects and research insights this work has come from and been based on would be of interest to share for the wider 4H Create network.
One of the examples you describe is the Network of Creative Enterprise in Bristol. Can you give a little background to the collaborative network and how these hubs were organised?
So, the Network for Creative Enterprise was established in October 2017 to run for 2 years to help freelancers, artists, creative practitioners, startup micro-businesses, and small to medium-sized enterprises in the west of England area make a sustainable living from their creative ideas. The programme was awarded £1 million of funding by Arts Council England and the European Regional Development Fund to achieve this ambition. The approach for the network was to bring together 4 very different creative hubs, each of whom brought their own unique focuses, talents, markets, approaches, and communities in a new kind of cultural ecology. Due to the informal and flexible nature of creative work, it means that the aggregation of small businesses into a network offers them stability and growth through an increased level of connectivity. Creative hubs are key providers of resources for businesses to form these bonds. These are spaces of support that help connect, motivate, broker, and provide space for interaction in an increasingly diffuse creative sector. This program was led by Watershed, a digital creativity centre in Bristol, and a public-facing sort of cultural venue with a cinema, bar, restaurant in the city centre. Watershed hosts the Pervasive Media Studio, home to a community of over 150 artists, creative companies, technologists, and academics exploring creative and cultural opportunities offered by new technologies. The second hub was Spike Island, an art space in Bristol offering studios to over 70 artists, workspace for 35 creative businesses, community resources for 160 associates, and is home to University of Western England Bristol's Fine Art BA Honours programme. The Guild is actually based in Bath and is a unique co-working space for creative and technology freelancers and small businesses. And the fourth hub was Northwest Media Centre, The Factory, which was a digital fabrication, design and prototype manufacturing hub, or micro-manufacturing hub, and makerspace in the south of Bristol. And the network had an academic partner, which was the Creative Economy Unit at University of Western England Bristol's Digital Cultures Research Centre, who have been developing critical approaches to understanding how creative economies work and generate value beyond the economic. For them, thinking ecologically involves always looking at the whole aggregation of parts that constitute the system. In this instance, these parts are the companies, people, institutions, places, mentors, resources, communications infrastructures, producers, and stakeholders that were relevant in the region.
So how did you come to work with this network?
I was initially invited into Network for Creative Enterprise to contribute mapping workshops for the residents as creative entrepreneurs as part of their wider training and development program. I delivered about 8 workshops over the 2 years, which reached about 80 of their resident entrepreneurs. And based on the success of those workshops, the Network for Creative Enterprise team and I agreed to apply my mapping methods to support the evaluation of the project as a whole, as part of a leadership fellowship that I was applying for. So the University of Western England, Bristol and I, we discovered an affinity in our network-based approach to understanding the creative economy. So I offered to capture the granular details of individual enterprises' development through the program as case studies or case examples to inform their more macro-level data that University of Western England, Bristol were carrying out.
What did you do with them, and how did this build on your research?
So my fellowship applies a creative growth model to frame the mapping and co-design methods I use to support strategic planning, collaboration, and more developmental evaluation. The creative growth model identifies 4 key perspectives of stakeholder interests in creative enterprise: economic interest, cultural interest, social interest, and interest in developing practice, which then frame 4 aspects of qualitative or relational growth that I've seen emerge, discerned by the live or potential work of those key stakeholders or actors. So that's network growth. So that's new and enhanced relationships and communities of practice. Knowledge growth, which is around new and enhanced skills, know-how, or ways to use technology. Value growth, which is about new or enhanced products, services, experiences, and ways of working, essentially the outputs of creative work. And finally, market growth, which is about the new or enhanced audiences or forms of communication. So I delivered mapping sessions as part of evaluating Network for Creative Enterprise and interviews with 12 residents from across the 4 hubs. These informed an exhibition of their businesses held at one of the hubs, with my model used to visually represent their journeys of development mapped into them. Each story was unique, non-linear, telling of the ups and downs and different directions that growth and opportunities can emerge from. And this was vitally important in the network's story and learning. These insights then deeply informed their final report to articulate what made a difference from the perspective of the residents and allowed their voices to come through.
Can you give me a bit more detail about one of the hubs and the difference that your work made to them?
So, Pervasive Media Studio, which is based at Watershed, was the lead hub and hosted 49 residents, with the wider network hosting about 147 residents in total. And this hub specialized in developing creative, commercial, and cultural opportunities offered by new digital technologies, what is often referred to as immersive media. And at the heart of the program, Whole Network for Creative Enterprise was a curatorial, intentional approach to supporting this new creative ecosystem. This involved assigning creative producers for each hub to design a program for residents that was responsive to their needs, put their well-being high on the agenda, and that offered a range of interventions at different scales to match the diversity of types of business and work. Thus, a network producer was also established at Pervasive Media Studio to support the wider hub producers and connections across the network. The interventions supporting creative entrepreneurs included access to free working space in the hub, one-to-one development sessions with the hub producers, peer-to-peer support encouraged through studio environments at each of the hubs, one-to-one business mentoring sessions with relevant mentors, a diversity of workshops relevant across the network, and then hub-specific workshops relevant to the disciplines at each hub. And also very valuable was tax and accountancy clinics or workshops on IP related to creative work. There were also bursary opportunities offered at a micro scale of around £800 to slightly larger scales between £1,000 and £2,500, which were taken up by across the network of residents. And then there were, of course, access to hub-specific support or equipment, such as technical expertise or little sort of making procedures. What my work supported in this process of evaluating this project was to capture and articulate some key learnings for the network. So the reflective mapping sessions I did with 12 select residents towards the end of the project captured their journey of development since joining the Network for Creative Enterprise program to be shared as case examples at a showcase exhibition at one of the hubs. One case from Pervasive Media Studio was Music Memory Box, who firstly developed their creative idea of a music box for people living with dementia into a working prototype. This prototype would store objects that, when placed over a central circle, would play related music or soundtrack. She then gained bursary funded, which was match or self-funded further, to develop a team to test the prototype with care home groups and gained extraordinary outcomes and testimonies. However, she then hit barriers in attracting further investment, losing that initial team, only to later eventually find an investor to build a new team and launch a Kickstarter campaign based on the originally strong testimonies. The campaign was a success, allowing her to gradually move into batch production, but her experience also got her a position as an automation fellowship to transfer her learnings on engaging people with dementia to engaging people living with depression. So this is one of the stories captured that revealed how truly non-linear the progression of these creative entrepreneurs was through the program, that these were highly personal journeys, susceptible to personal circumstances and emergent opportunities through the network, that would live or die by sustaining motivation, opportunities, and ways to absorb risk at key stages. Conversely, they also showed when residents were showing real leadership, often due to developing innovative or niche concepts that were not currently in the market. This demanded not only finding a clear narrative, but often building advocacy for their product in order to create understanding and demand in a wider context. As such, they were quickly finding they were needing to develop leadership skills and opportunities to speak at events, leading cross-disciplinary groups, or indeed become an authority on their emerging subjects. Alongside the exhibition of residence development, I also delivered workshops with the outputs of these mappings with residents, with the hub producers to capture the learning and development of the producers. Through all this complexity of the network, the hub producers learn to collaborate closely, forming a team to support each other and share these highly individual stories of development for creative entrepreneurs and how to support them and connect them to the wider ecosystem. This sharing as a team led to them co-curating key events and groups across the hubs in response to what they were learning and signposting to resources between the hubs and, most importantly, learning together when residents were ready for certain types of support. The hub producers have become real sites of knowledge and experience helping to facilitate the network. And so the challenge emerged that once the funding for these producers ran out, they would largely move on, taking a lot of this knowledge and experience with them. The network had been designed without any formal branding or central structure, as the hubs were to take precedent. However, this meant many of the shared learnings had nowhere to go organisationally. So the academic partner and myself co-authored the final report to capture and articulate all these shared learnings, setting out recommendations to advance the producer's role in particular and how hub models could adapt. However, organisationally, there were few formal mechanisms for hubs to sustain key aspects of the successes from Network for Creative Enterprise, such as removing barriers like studio fees at early stages for creative entrepreneurs or establishing full-time producer teams. As such, I would add that such programs need buy-in from leadership across the network to learn key strengths and weaknesses as they emerge, rather than simply at the end, to enable actions to allow developmental, evaluation, and learning to take hold.
How is this approach being used in other environments?
So the Fellowship has partnered with Charts Argyll and Isles, which is a culture heritage arts network in the west of Scotland, to deliver mapping sessions and collaborative workshops on cultural identity and placemaking with sort of local creative enterprises and cultural enterprises. And the insights gathered from that work aim to support Charts' steering group, who have been set up to develop strategic planning on the communities, assets, challenges, and collaborative opportunities that emerge, and therefore develop funding proposals to establish sustainable creative micro networks or micro clusters, as we're calling them. I've also partnered with the Digital Arts Festival, Northeast of North, or NEON, in Dundee, to support their outreach program in making digital skills, arts, and creative careers accessible to everyone. This aims to co-design evaluation methods and approaches as part of their annual program of outreach events in Dundee to better capture the impacts and value created through such practices, and then embed an evidence-building approach within NEON's core program in a sustainable and ongoing capacity.
This is obviously part of a wider research program at the Innovation School. How is it relating to this wider research and teaching at the Innovation School?
Our research in the creative economy spans a diverse range of regional, national, and international contexts. So there's a focus in the areas of creative microenterprises, but also craft and heritage, particularly in the Highlands and Islands of Scotland, creative cultures of innovation, the circular economy, and place-based innovation more broadly. We believe that design innovation can support more nuanced notions of economic development for creative industries and creative practitioners within the regional and cross-centre context we collaborate with. But as a small institute, this maintains links with other research programs, such as programs in digital health and well-being or social innovation in the public sector and the complex challenges of public engagement. Our research is very much driven by understanding and generating social and cultural impact and innovation through creativity and design practices. This feeds into our Innovation School Masters programs, with our researchers regularly teaching on our Masters courses, sharing live projects and live contexts, while I've also been involved in delivering Masters modules on the creative economy and design innovation with international partners, particularly with Audencia Business School in Nantes.
And what's happening next with this research?
So the next steps in this research includes gaining an extension to my Value of Creative Growth Fellowship to generate and share case studies of creative enterprise development and cultural ecologies through a knowledge exchange program. This means connecting Bristol, Dundee, and Glasgow's creative clusters with other creative cities internationally to share and learn about cases of creative value. This would also build knowledge exchange networks of regional development to share and learn about creative value to rural and regional culture and context. As such, I'm inviting any members of 4H Create interested in learning more or even contributing to such a network of exchange to get in touch.
Thank you very much, Michael, for joining us today and sharing your experience.
Thank you for listening to me.